No, I said we might get some bologna. I didn't say we would. Oh my goodness. Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanded Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how. Folks, we're going to take a break from the comic books here and we're going to shift gears and go back to the comic strips. No, not the old comic strips by Archie Goodwin. We're talking about newer comic strips that came in the Star Wars Kids magazine by Scholastic. Now, these came out around the 90s, exactly when the movie came out. Scholastic was doing everything it could to cash in on that movie, baby. And so these magazines were just for kids. They had little fun facts of the characters, and they also came with a comic strip. Now, they wrote one and they got Ryder Wenham to write it. Whoa, they got a big name to do their first one. And I guess that's how you go. You go strong, right? When you bring out your first comic strip for this new book. And the comic strip was called The Rebel Thief. Now it's in issues 1 through 5. And in this story, Han goes after a Sith treasure that he discovers may be on Yavin 4. He wants to get it so he can use part of the money to pay back Jabba because he still owes Jabba the Hutt. And then the second half he'd like to give to the rebellion. Now, Leia doesn't trust Han. She knows that he went off for that Sith treasure, but she thinks he's in it for himself because he's all about that money, as we learned from episode 4. But wait a minute. After all the adventures that so far we've talked about, I haven't gotten to a ton more adventures they had between A New Hope and Empire. Why does she still not trust Han? You actually get to see this in Empire Strikes Back. This would be a nice question for someone. So, Han's going to leave it. Oh, he can only think about himself. Their argument and banter back and forth. She can't believe Han's leaving them already. Well, of course that's a little bit of love there too, but is there some distrust? Does she truly believe he's leaving? What has he done? I wish they would have shown a little bit more selfish of a Han. They couldn't have back then, but I would like to see a more selfish Han. Some stories that happened during that rebellion era. We don't get any because, of course, Han is a smuggler with a heart of gold. That's his MO, so I can see that. But still, it's interesting. This is one of the stories where she still doesn't trust Han, even though they've had, chronologically, a lot of adventures together. He's even come to their rescue before. Remember? The bounty hunter at Ord Mantell? So maybe this takes place a little bit earlier than that. I don't know. Anyway, I'm putting it right here, sticking to it. This is where it goes in the chronology. So Han grabs this Sith treasure. It doesn't affect him. He doesn't have the Force. He doesn't go all evil or get Sith powers. That would be stupid. But he does sell it or fence it and give part of the profit to Sproul, a friend of his or acquaintance of his, who is going to in turn deliver it to Jabba, because Han doesn't feel comfortable showing up at Jabba's palace right now, right? Jabba's probably hopping mad. He may have people shoot him on sight. So Han's like, here, Sproul, you do it for me. You deliver these goods. He does deliver the goods to Jabba. Jabba takes the money, but says, I'm not releasing that bounty off Han's head. He's still got a axe to grind with Han. So he doesn't release the bounty, even though he gets the money. Now, this is an interesting fact, because we're still hearing that Han's worried about the bounty on his head and he needs to pay Jabba back. Now, obviously, if this story, The Rebel Thief, causes somewhat of a conundrum, because if Han knew that, in Empire, that he still needed to pay Jabba, then he must have known that Sproul's deal didn't work. Now, maybe he thought that Sproul just took the money and ran. As far as he knows, maybe Jabba never got it before. That could be a possibility and probably is. But the other thing I like about this is that it basically shows Han still dealing with Jabba's debt. Now, that gets mentioned every once in a while in stories between Star Wars and Empire, but it gets forgotten more than it gets remembered. Remember, in the movies, this is very important to Han to pay off Jabba's debt. But in the expanded universe at the time, there's a lot going on. He's fighting the Empire, fighting giant monsters and everything else, so maybe he just didn't have time. Anyway, the second set of comic strips was written by Mike Barr, and it's in issues 6 through 10 of the Star Wars Kids magazine, and it's called X-Wing Marks the Spot. You see, using that money that Han got selling the Sith artifacts, Luke, Leia, and Han go off to use that money to buy T-65 X-Wings. And so that's what they're going to try. They're going to try to put that money to good use. They didn't have any idea that Han was going to give that money back to the rebellion. And by the way, I think it's the first series, I forgot to mention this, he mentions to Han mentions to Leia that he gave back the reward money. What else does she want? Now you're thinking, whoa, whoa, whoa. What happened? I thought Crimson Jack stole the money. Well, this is very easily rectified here. First off, I'll give you the honest reason. The Marvel Comics were secondary canon for the longest. They didn't make it to C canon status till way later, till people finally, a few of them figured out how to fit all the comic books into the expanded universe, into C canon status. So at this time, I think this was late 90s, like I said, it still wasn't, the Marvel comic books weren't yet canon. And so that's why he could write this story. However, you could say that after he got robbed by Crimson Jack, remember, he has saved the princess once again. He deserves another reward. Or probably Leia heard that, oh man, Crimson Jack, that jerk, who captured us, we had that adventure with him on Trexel, he stole your money too. And so she made sure he got his money's worth. Now this would be in Leia's character, because she doesn't want to think that Han that she owes Han something. So she made sure that the rebellion paid their debts. It got stolen from him, wasn't his fault, so I'll cut you a check, hotshot. I can see that happening. And then I can see Han going, no, you forget it, you take it, I don't want it. Now, that's more probable than saying, there's a contradiction here. I think that would have happened. Anyway, so how are you going to get these? Because the Star Wars Kids magazines are impossible to find. Thankfully, Dark Horse made the Wild Space Omnibus, which is a fantastic collection of hard-to-find stories. Folks, I haven't talked much about Wild Space, the Omnibus, but I'm going to tell you right now, it was one of my favorite trade paperbacks. I think it is my favorite trade paperback. No, it's one of them. I like the Droids Ewoks cartoon trade they came out with, but I'm very happy they came out with Wild Space, because it collects stuff like these hard-to-find comic strips. So that omnibus, I don't know how much it is. I can't imagine it'd be worth that much, but if you can get your hands on it, it's definitely worth your time. All right, folks, that's it for now. See you next time with another video.